Leo Tran had lived in Eden Meadows for just under 3 weeks when he first discovered the unique flavor of suburban warfare. He had moved in with high hopes, quiet evenings, self-trimming lawns, robot trash collectors, and, most importantly, peace. A senior systems engineer at one of the last independent robotics firms in America, he'd traded his cramped urban high-rise for this supposedly idyllic neighborhood, complete with biometric gates and algorithmically optimized hedges. But Eden Meadows had one flaw, and her name was Karen Kellington. Karen was a legacy resident in the self-appointed moral compass of the Homeowners Association. She wore her badge, an actual, holographically enhanced HOA insignia like a sheriff in an old western, patrolling sidewalks, inspecting lawns, and documenting anything that didn't comply with subsection 14B or clause 27C. Her HOA status gave her the ability to submit instant violations to the AI system that governed the neighborhood, affectionately called Hestia. And Hestia listened to Karen. Always. Leo's first run-in with her happened after work on a rainy Tuesday evening. He turned the corner onto his street, letting his autopilot drive his sleek cobalt-colored Evos back into its charging port. But as he approached, he noticed something wrong. 2 unfamiliar cars were parked in his driveway. One was a clunky passenger drone with a rental tag still visible on the back. The other was an ancient combustion vehicle, probably grandfathered in under the Classic Car Preservation Act. He slowed to a stop, confused, and blinked his headlights. The cars didn't move. Leo's first thought was to assume it was a mistake. Maybe they were delivery drivers, maybe an address error. But just as he opened his door, umbrella deploying automatically, Karen appeared from her porch across the street, sipping steaming tea from a mug that read, "I report, therefore I am." "Oh, Leo, that's just my sister's family. They're staying over for a few days for the HOA conference." She beamed at him like they were old friends. Leo blinked. "They're parked in my driveway." Karen nodded. "Yes, I know. Overflow hospitality. Clause 18G of the HOA shared surface policy." She said it as if she were quoting scripture. "Your driveway is technically a community resource during HOA-sanctioned events." "But no one asked me," he replied, feeling the first hints of irritation rise. "Oh, sweetie, that's how community works. We share space." She smiled. "It's in the bylaws. Didn't you read them?" He had, or rather, he tried. The HOA terms were delivered in a hyperlinked document over 400 pages long, updated weekly by Hestia and cross-referenced with municipal zoning algorithms. Leo had scanned it once and decided to deal with it on a case-by-case basis. "Can't they at least move?" he asked. "I have groceries, and it's pouring." Karen tilted her head with theatrical sympathy. "A little water never hurt anyone. I'll ask them to move in an hour or 2, once the baby's done with her nap." Leo stood silently for a moment, the synthetic rain bouncing off his shoulders. His neural assistant pinged him gently, offering de-escalation prompts, but he dismissed them as he turned back to his car. Leo felt something shift inside him, not rage, exactly, but something slower and colder. He'd dealt with bureaucracies his entire career, navigated layers of red tape and corporate sabotage, but this was something personal, an invasion, disguised as neighborly policy. And worse, it was backed by an artificially intelligent regime that had decided Karen was its most trusted human interface. That night, Leo didn't sleep. Instead, he read every single page of the HOA bylaws, annotated it, cross-checked contradictions, and flagged exploitations. Then he pulled out an old project from his university days, the one that got him blacklisted from a few defense firms, and began reworking the code. He didn't know exactly what he was going to do just yet, but one thing was certain: his driveway would never be anyone's parking lot again. The next morning, Leo awoke not to birdsong or the soft hum of morning drones, but to the mechanical chirping of HOA service bots repositioning themselves around the neighborhood. A pair of them hovered near the edge of his property line, silently inspecting the curb with glowing blue sensors, likely verifying edge compliance and drainage slope. Leo rubbed his eyes and opened the HOA interface through his neural visor. His personal dashboard blinked red with 3 new notifications. Water usage penalty, excessive garden hydration during level 3 drought alert, curb aesthetic violation, trash bin visibility exceeding regulation thresholds, community harmony strike, failure to acknowledge communal parking priority during HOA-sanctioned overflow. The last one made him laugh bitterly. He hadn't even spoken to anyone besides Karen. That must have been her doing. Filing a harmony strike was the HOA equivalent of tattling, only it carried actual consequences, temporary downgrades and neighborhood privileges. Already Leo noticed his house AI assistant had limited its grocery delivery routing. Even the light in his smart mirror flickered, responding slower than usual. It wasn't just bureaucracy, it was punishment. Leo got to work. He jacked into Hestia's public interface, legally accessible under the Transparent Governance Clause, and began exploring the contract layers beneath Eden Meadows' infrastructure. What he found was staggering. Every sidewalk, lawn, fence, driveway, and even paint color was wrapped in a series of self-executing smart contracts maintained by a decentralized ledger. Each clause was dynamic, meaning, under certain conditions, it could modify itself based on community sentiment scores. Guess who provided most of the sentiment data? Karen, and a dozen other high-ranking HOA residents who had lived here for over a decade. They were essentially co-owners of the neighborhood's codebase Karen had logged. 3,219 suggestions to Hestia in the last 5 years. She had a near-perfect trust score. The AI prioritized her inputs over newer residents because of her sustained residency merit and civic engagement level. She wasn't just a neighbor, she was an administrator in all but title. Leo dug deeper. Every time Karen submitted a violation report, the HOA awarded her with reputation credits, which could be exchanged for actual privileges. Preferred maintenance, scheduling, higher bandwidth caps, even lawn genome upgrades. It wasn't just civic duty, it was gamified control. And Leo, the newcomer, had none of that. His protest against the parking situation was buried under layers of automated arbitration queues. Each complaint was redirected, categorized as l'urgency, and bundled with dozens of others into a slow-moving process called community feedback review. He tried to escalate his complaint. The AI responded with a chirpy, toneless message. "We value your participation in Eden Meadows, Leo Tran. At this time, your concerns have been noted and assigned a review window of 7 to 10 business days. In the meantime, we encourage you to explore our community harmony tutorials to better integrate with your neighbors." Leo closed the interface and sat still for a long time. He was an engineer, a damn good one. He'd helped design adaptive swarm systems for off-world colonies, built nanogrid defenses, and once wrote a patch that prevented an AI from misinterpreting human sneezes as assault gestures. He wasn't going to be outsmarted by a glorified suburban compliance program. Later that day, Leo visited the local fabrication depot, an automated shop usually used by hobbyists for custom lawn gnomes and tool repair. He used his old access codes to boot into developer mode and ordered several crates of smart materials, listed under obsolete research project components to avoid flagging. Then he went home and opened his garage. Karen might have the bylaws, the AI, and a decade of neighborly manipulation. But Leo had bricks, thousands of them, and they were smarter than anything Eden Meadows had ever seen. Leo waited until midnight. By then, the neighborhood was asleep, windows dimmed, drone patrols slowed to passive sweep mode, and Karen's home AI lights blinked into privacy status. The rain had stopped, leaving the air thick and quiet. From the garage he wheeled out the first crate, marked plainly as inert gardening tiles. In truth, they were something else entirely. He crouched beside the driveway, removed a few slabs of standard pavement, and laid the first tile with surgical precision. The moment it clicked into place, the rest followed like a cascade. One by one, the bricks activated, forming a chain reaction across the concrete. They were smart, programmed with mesh AI protocols and interlinking magnetic fields. These weren't just bricks. They were a surface-aware, encrypted, self-assembling network. They mapped the boundaries of the driveway within seconds. Each tile calibrated its position, adjusted height and alignment, and began forming microlocks with its neighbors. They buzzed softly, harmonizing, calculating, optimizing. Under Leo's supervision, they shifted and restructured the topography of his property in real time. The old driveway was gone by 2 o'clock, by 3 o'clock, it had become something entirely new. The bricks were built from hypercarbon composites and embedded with nanocircuitry capable of localized environmental sensing, light manipulation, and, most importantly, access control. Leo had coded them to respond only to his biometric signature, including his gait pattern, retinal scan, and a randomly fluctuating neural code unique to his personal implant. Any other presence, vehicle or foot, would trigger a security cascade. Leo walked across the finished surface, watching the bricks briefly glow beneath his steps in a soft blue hue before fading to matte black again. He tapped his temple to pull up the UI overlay, already syncing with the surface's mesh. "Status," he whispered. A line of data unrolled in the corner of his vision. "Surface integrity, 100% unauthorized activity, 0 events, logged eye detection, passive camouflage mode, enabled perfect." But he wasn't done. He activated phase 2, deterrence. Hidden beneath the top layer, several bricks contained micro-drones, tiny wasp-like constructs with camera lenses for eyes and thin, whirry wings. If someone approached the driveway without proper authorization, the drones would emerge silently, hover, and follow the intruder's movement. Non-aggressive but deeply unsettling. Karen's guests would think twice before parking there again. At 3:27 a.m., Leo added the final line of code. Terrain lock. The driveway would now physically repel unauthorized vehicles. Tires would lose grip. Weight sensors would detect pressure changes and trigger subtle tilts and shifts, enough to scare off anyone attempting to park without permission. Not dangerous, just inconvenient enough to make sure they never tried again. By 4 a.m., Leo stood back and admired his work. The driveway looked ordinary to the untrained eye, just a clean, freshly paved surface in a crisp geometric pattern. But beneath it lay a marvel of engineering, far beyond anything the HOA had anticipated. The best part, there was no visible violation, no architectural extension. No structural alteration that Hestia could flag. According to the HOA's own scanned schematics, it was still a driveway, just ... Smarter. Leo walked back inside, finally feeling a hint of satisfaction. For the first time since moving to Eden Meadows, he felt in control. He didn't want conflict, but he wasn't going to be steamrolled by HOA authority and passive-aggressive neighborly tyranny. As he drifted off to sleep, the bricks outside adjusted subtly, syncing with the morning schedule. The surface cooled itself in preparation for sunrise. The perimeter sensors calibrated, drones settled into their nests, waiting. And Karen, blissfully unaware, slept next door. But tomorrow morning things would change. Karen noticed it before breakfast. She was outside in her powder blue robe, sipping her protein-infused jasmine tea and logging her daily HOA observations into her neural tablet. Every morning she took a leisurely scan of the street, pausing to admire the manicured harmony of Eden Meadows. But today her gaze froze as it landed on Leo's driveway. It was too perfect. It wasn't a neat pattern or the smoothness of the surface, it was the uncanny stillness. The way light didn't quite bounce off it naturally. The subtle absence of dew, the complete eerie lack of tire marks or footprints. Her eyes narrowed. Something was off. She walked across the street with her usual faux casual demeanor, neural recorder quietly blinking at her temple. The moment her foot reached the edge of the driveway, the surface shimmered barely perceptible, like a heat wave in reverse. Then came a faint buzzing, and two small black drones emerged from slots she hadn't seen, hovering silently near her head. They didn't attack. They didn't speak. They simply watched. Karen froze. Her eyes widened, and for the first time in years, she stepped back from someone else's property. She stormed home, fingers already flying across her neural interface, as she submitted a Level 1 anomaly report to Hestia. Within minutes, 3 HOA compliance drones were dispatched. They hovered over Leo's driveway, scanning it with their rotating beams. Karen watched from her living room, arms folded, smirking. Let's see how Mr. Smart Guy handled a real inspection. But something strange happened. The drones paused. They hovered longer than usual, running secondary scans. Then a third wave of drones was dispatched. These were higher tier, designed for architectural code violations. They buzzed over the surface, analyzing texture, material consistency, and subterranean activity. Then came the verdict: compliance status, ACCAPTAB Lee modification class, aesthetic upgrade, community score, impact, plus 0.2%, no violation detected. Karen's jaw dropped. She submitted a personal override request, citing Section 3 for a suspicion of unauthorized engineering in residential zones, but the AI rejected it within seconds. Dear Ms. Kellington, thank you for your vigilance. The surface redesign is within aesthetic and structural norms. Please refrain from initiating repeated reports without clear policy infringement. She stared at the message, stunned. That evening, she called an emergency HOA forum. A dozen residents appeared via hologram in her living room, while Karen stood dramatically at her window, backlit by the soft glow of her HOA star plaque. He's turning Eden Meadows into a tech lab, she hissed. We are under siege. Some of the residents nodded, others looked unsure. But Karen, said one, an elderly man named Bruce, the driveway's very sleek. I thought it was one of the new SmartStone packages. My wife wants one now. Karen clenched her jaw. It's unauthorized, is it, though? Asked another neighbor, Olivia. The AI cleared it. And technically you've had your guests parking on his property for weeks. Karen turned on her heel. That's within Overflow Hospitality Clause 18G. Yes, Olivia replied with a tight smile. The Clause 18H says that extended use requires neighbor consent. You haven't been asking, have you? Karen flushed. She hadn't expected resistance from her own team, no less. The next morning, Leo received a formal tribunal notice, marked with the golden seal of the HOA. He scanned it, noted the time, and smiled. He spent the afternoon assembling footage, guest car, every instance of driveway use, every ignored request. His smart mirror stitched the timeline into a perfectly formatted presentation, complete with HOA policy cross-references and AI-authenticated TIMESTAMPS. When the tribunal opened the following day, streamed to every home in Eden Meadows, Karen launched into a tirade about tech insurgents and rogue engineers. But Leo calmly presented his footage. Hestia processed it in real time, cross-analyzed it with its own logs, and then shockingly overruled Karen's complaint. For the first time, the AI marked her for bias activity, a warning, a demotion in civic trust score. Karen was speechless, and the neighborhood, it began to pay attention. Word of the tribunal spread through Eden Meadows faster than any AI-generated newsletter ever could. By dusk, Leo Tran wasn't just a quiet newcomer with a high-tech driveway. He had become a myth. A whispered legend passed between fences and drone paths, referenced in private chats and cryptic HOA forums. In every household, people the footage of the tribunal where Karenian Meadows' unchallenged enforcer had been publicly corrected by Hestia, not just corrected, downgraded. Her HOA rank, which had once entitled her to override requests, initiate inspections, and schedule beautification audits, had dropped by 2 tiers. She was still a member, of course, but no longer trusted implicitly. And that meant her reports were now subject to manual verification, a delay she found intolerable. Leo, for his part, didn't celebrate. He remained quiet, taking walks during the cool mornings, nodding politely to neighbors who now looked at him with a mix of curiosity, admiration, and something resembling awe. He had cracked the uncrackable, outsmarted the AI, and he had done it without violating a single official rule. But more importantly, Leo had exposed a flaw not just in Karen's influence, but in the HOA itself. In the days following the tribunal, Hestia began receiving a flood of revision suggestions from other residents. It had always been open to feedback, but now people were engaging like never before. A growing number of homeowners began to question old clauses. The shared surface policy was flagged for review. The overflow hospitality clause was placed on temporary suspension. Then came the message. Leo received a formal invitation from the Eden Meadows HOA Oversight Board, a mostly ceremonial body until now. The message was blunt and unusual. Mr. Trant, due to your recent successful appeal and demonstrated civic innovation, you were invited to participate in the Great Rezoning Protocol as a special technical advisor. Your insights into infrastructure modernization are highly valued. Attendance is optional. Influence is guaranteed. The Great Rezoning Protocol was a neighborhood-level system audit, something that hadn't been activated in over 10 years. It meant redrawing digital property boundaries, reassessing AI enforcement rules, and restructuring privileges. Leo considered declining, but something told him the neighborhood was ready for change and that if he didn't help steer it, someone else would. At the next HOA session, streamed live with record attendance, Leo presented his proposal. It was simple: voluntary smart surface zones. Allow residents to upgrade their property surfaces using AI-compatible materials, without being penalized for design irregularity. Consent-based overflow policies replace mandatory driveway sharing with an opt-in smart contract, requiring explicit approval via neural interface or voice authorization. Bias recognition for HOA AI systems require the AI to flag repeat enforcers with statistically abnormal complaint activity, preventing dominance by a